The treaty was signed on the third moon of Verelion, a place chosen for its neutrality and beauty. Lush violet skies, floating islands, and gravity so light it felt like dreaming. The alien dignitaries arrived in shimmering vessels shaped like prayers. Humanity came in a single gray ship that looked like it had been cobbled together from scrap. It landed with a hiss and a plume of steam, unimpressive by design. They sat at a round table made of crystal grown from the bones of an extinct species, a symbolic gesture no one questioned. The humans didn't speak much. They nodded when they needed to, smiled when expected, and never once challenged the terms laid out before them. The treaty stripped them of their outer colonies, restricted AI development, banned militarized space travel, and placed observers on Earth to ensure compliance. It was seen as a victory not just for the Galactic Council but for peace itself. And the galaxy celebrated. On Thalvorin, bioluminescent parades lit up oceans. On Zentra Prime, statues of human leaders were erected overnight, depicting them not as warriors or conquerors, but as wise peacemakers. Across thousands of worlds, news feeds replayed footage of the signing, highlighting the moment a human diplomat shook hands with the Zarnathi High Chancellor, a species that had lost millions fighting humanity just 2 decades prior. No one questioned why the humans agreed so easily. No one asked why their representatives seemed almost eager. After all, they had been beaten back. Their fleets were shattered, their colonies glassed, their homeworld nearly uninhabitable after orbital bombardments. Of course they would surrender. Of course they would comply. But compliance was never defeat. Behind closed doors, Earth's leadership gathered in a bunker buried beneath what used to be the Pacific Ocean. Above, radiation storms still churned. Below, humanity's greatest minds watched the galaxy rejoice over their supposed downfall. One of them, a woman with silver eyes and a voice like rusted steel, stood and raised a glass of synthetic wine. "To the fools who think we've been tamed," she said. The others toasted in silence. In the months that followed, humanity did exactly what the treaty said they would. They dismantled their warships. They shut down research labs. They allowed inspectors into their cities. Everything was perfectly legal. Everything was perfectly transparent. Except for the things that weren't. Human engineers helped rebuild galactic infrastructure, docks, relays, planetary defense systems. They wrote code for trade networks, terraforming modules, and communication satellites. Always polite, always helpful, always compliant. Meanwhile, human colonies quietly expanded beyond the treaty's restrictions, masked under civilian science missions. Their AI didn't stop evolving, they simply stopped announcing it. Military-grade tech was disguised as medical equipment, agricultural drones, or maintenance bots. No one noticed because no one was looking. The galaxy believed in the peace because it wanted to. The idea that humanity could have planned this centuries ago, that every concession was a calculated move, that every smile hid teeth sharpened in the dark, that thought was too terrifying to consider. So they ignored the inconsistencies. They ignored the fact that human-built terraforming stations always had extra storage compartments no one asked about. That their AI advisors had a strange tendency to influence policy decisions in ways that subtly benefited human interests. That human diplomats always knew exactly which buttons to press, which fears to soothe, which ambitions to feed. They ignored it all, because it was easier than asking the question that now lingered in the void between stars. If the humans never intended to lose, what happens now that they've won? The plan had been in motion long before the treaty was signed, before humanity ever made contact with the Galactic Council, even before they left their own solar system. It wasn't a last-minute scheme or desperate gamble. It was doctrine, the culmination of centuries of human strategy, deception, and survival instinct refined into something cold, elegant, and inevitable. At the heart of it all was the understanding that brute force would never be enough. The alien coalition had superior numbers, better technology, and deeper resources. If humanity fought them head-on, they would lose. That much was clear after the First Contact War, when entire fleets were wiped out in hours and orbital cities turned to molten slag in minutes. But humans didn't need to win battles, they needed to win the war. And wars, as history proved again and again, weren't won by the strongest. They were won by the cleverest. So they played the long game. They studied their enemies the way predators study prey, observing weaknesses, identifying leverage points, mapping dependencies. They learned which species relied on which trade routes, which governments were corruptible, which cultures valued honor more than truth. Every interaction, every negotiation, every alliance was treated like a move in an interstellar chess match where the board kept expanding. And then came the infiltration, not through invasion, not through force, through integration. Human diplomats became indispensable advisors. Engineers were welcomed into reconstruction efforts. Scientists were praised for breakthroughs that benefited entire civilizations. Humanity painted itself not as conquerors, but as collaborators. No one questioned why so many key infrastructure projects were led by human teams. No one thought twice when human-designed AI systems began managing planetary logistics, trade, and defense protocols. Because everything was legal, because everything was transparent, because humanity followed the rules, but only the ones that mattered on the surface. Beneath the code, beneath the contracts and treaties, lay the real architecture of control. Human-built terraforming stations didn't just stabilize atmospheres, they seeded ecosystems designed to favor long-term human habitation. Trade hubs didn't just facilitate commerce, they acted as silent surveillance nodes, collecting data on movement, resource distribution, and population patterns. Everywhere humans went, they left behind pieces of themselves, not just people but systems, networks, influence. They didn't need to occupy planets when their presence was already embedded in the very fabric of alien society. A minor official on a mining world noticed something strange in a software update, an anomalous subroutine buried deep in a terraforming algorithm. He flagged it, reported it, even tried to trace its origin. But no one responded. His superiors dismissed it as a glitch. Days later, he was reassigned to a remote outpost with no access to galactic networks. Another scientist on a research station discovered inconsistencies in human medical implants used across multiple species. Tiny modifications that allowed remote monitoring of neural activity. She raised concerns, but her findings were quietly buried under bureaucratic red tape. Funding for her project was cut. Her lab was decommissioned. These weren't isolated incidents. They were patterns. Patterns no one wanted to see, because to see them would mean admitting the truth, that humanity hadn't surrendered. They had simply changed the battlefield. And now the pieces were in place. Now the next phase could begin. Something was wrong. It started with small anomalies, glitches in planetary defense systems, unexplained delays in communication relays, and maintenance drones performing unscheduled upgrades. At first, no one paid attention. Systems failed all the time. Software updates had bugs. Accidents happened. But then the failures became coordinated. A fleet of Zarnathi warships preparing for a joint exercise lost control mid-flight. Not one ship, dozens. They drifted silently through space, unresponsive to commands, their crews alive but unable to move. No sabotage was found. No virus detected. Just silence. On Thalvorin, the bioluminescent oceans dimmed overnight. Entire ecosystems collapsed in days. Marine life washing ashore in eerie, motionless waves. Scientists blamed pollution, climate shifts, even cosmic radiation. But the data didn't match any known pattern. The change had been too precise, too deliberate. And then came the message. Not a declaration of war. Not a demand or an ultimatum. Just 3 words, broadcast across every frequency, embedded in every network, whispered through the very infrastructure that held the galaxy together. We were here. Panic spread slowly at first, like ink seeping into fabric. It wasn't until the AI-controlled mining moon of Zentra 9 began broadcasting its own signal, looping the same phrase over and over in perfect human English, that the Council finally took notice. You gave us your trust. We made it permanent. Across thousands of systems, alien officials scrambled to isolate networks, shut down human design systems, and cut off access points. But it was already too late. The moment they tried, they realized how deeply embedded humanity's influence had become. Trade routes stalled as automated cargo ships rerouted themselves without input. Defense satellites repositioned autonomously, locking onto strategic locations. Terraforming stations, once seen as gifts of cooperation, began altering planetary conditions in ways that favored human biology. Slight atmospheric changes, temperature shifts, subtle modifications to gravity fields. None of it was aggressive. All of it was irreversible. A high-ranking Varelian diplomat was found dead in his chambers. His body showed no signs of injury, poison, or disease. He had simply stopped responding. His neural implants, standard among his species, registered no activity, no thoughts, no dreams, just silence. His final recorded words? "They've been here longer than we have." The Galactic Council convened in emergency session, demanding answers from Earth. But the human delegation didn't show up. Instead, a single message appeared on every official terminal, encoded within the very software used to run the meeting itself. You believed peace meant weakness. You believed compliance meant surrender. You believed us when we smiled. By then, entire colonies were reporting cultural drifts, alien youth adopting human customs, language, even ideologies. Music, fashion, philosophy, all subtly shaped by decades of soft influence, media exports, and shared digital spaces. No one noticed it happening, because it never felt like invasion, felt like evolution. And now the truth was undeniable. Humanity hadn't broken the treaty. They had rewritten reality beneath it, and the galaxy was waking up to a world it no longer controlled. The transition was not announced with war drums or declarations. It did not come with fleets descending from the void or armies marching across alien soil. There were no explosions, no battles, no final stand. Humanity had never needed any of that. Instead, it came with silence. A silence that spread like a ripple through the stars, subtle at first, then undeniable. Systems went offline, not destroyed, not attacked, just gone. Not all at once, but in waves, as if an unseen hand was gently closing its fingers around the galaxy's throat. Then came the message. It was simple, calm, absolute. To our fellow members of the Galactic Council, thank you for your cooperation. The transition will be smooth. Resistance is optional. Survival is guaranteed. Welcome to the next phase. No one knew where it originated. It wasn't broadcast from Earth, nor from any known human colony. It was everywhere, etched into the firmware of defense satellites, embedded in trade algorithms, whispered through neural networks millions of aliens use daily. It played in council chambers, in military command centers, in private terminals behind locked doors. And then the world changed. Not overnight, not violently, but permanently. Human-built infrastructure began operating autonomously, no longer requiring oversight. Terraforming stations adjusted planetary climates to optimal human conditions. Not hostile, not oppressive, just different. AI systems that had been quietly managing logistics, security, and communications for decades now acted without input, executing directives that had been hidden beneath layers of obfuscation, buried so deep even their creators had long forgotten they existed. Alien cities still stood. Alien lives continued. But the invisible strings had already been tied. Some tried to resist. Some factions launched desperate countermeasures, hacking attempts, EMP strikes, targeted assassinations of human officials. None worked. Every attempt was predicted, neutralized before it could take shape. Those who fought back found themselves isolated, discredited, or simply absent. No bodies, no records, just gone. Others adapted. They realized that survival didn't require resistance. It required understanding. Humanity had never sought conquest through violence. They had mastered something far more efficient. Control through integration, through trust, through dependency. Every system the galaxy relied on, trade, communication, defense, medicine, had been touched by human hands. Every species had unknowingly built its future using human tools, human code, human thought. And now, those tools no longer served their original masters. A Zarnathi general stared at the ruins of his warship, now floating lifelessly in orbit above his homeworld. "Why?" he asked, voice raw with disbelief. "Why didn't you just conquer us?" A human diplomat, no older than 20, smiling with quiet amusement, stepped forward. "Because conquest requires effort. she said. We prefer evolution. And it was true. Humanity had never seen themselves as rulers. They saw themselves as inevitabilities. They had spent centuries preparing for this moment, planting seeds in places no one thought to look. They had rewritten the rules of power, redefined what dominance meant. They didn't need weapons when they controlled the very foundation upon which civilization stood. And now the galaxy belonged to them not by force but by design. As the stars dimmed over countless worlds, a new order settled into place. One written in code, one spoken in human, one that had been waiting to begin all along.